everybody, and recently I've been thinking about the meta of Destiny PvP, especially with Iron Banner being live. Iron Banner, if you do not currently know what the best guns are or what the best strategies are, play Iron Banner and you will soon realize that Thorn, the last word, Hawkmoon not as much, but it's still kind of there, Blink, Shotgun, and that's it. That's it. So right now I like to call it the insta-kill meta because we've gotten to a time where the time to kill is the same as Call of Duty, if not a little bit faster sometimes. And I think that a lot of people really enjoyed Destiny when the time to kill was somewhere between Halo and Call of Duty. Not as slow as Halo, but definitely not as fast as COD. So with that being said, I understand that balancing things takes a little while. You can't just buff something and nerf something as soon as people say it's an issue, because then you might create another issue by making something a little bit too strong, and then you have the same problem all over again, but with a different weapon. But what I will say is that I feel like Bungie really needs to have a team that is specifically dedicated to balancing PvP. Yeah, there's people where that's their job, but they're also working on future content. So when you have this live update team that's working on future content, that's working on balancing PvE, balancing PvP, balancing this, balancing that, there's not one team that's dedicated to balancing PvP. And honestly, every game that has a multiplayer component needs a team that's dedicated to doing that. I think we really need monthly updates, in my opinion. I think we do need that because it's very hard to balance something perfectly. It's not gonna happen where auto rifles are just as good as pulse rifles and hand cannons all at the same time. But what we could at least have is, oh, this gun's really good now, and this one's not so good, and pulse rifles are really good, and auto rifles are sort of good, and hand cannons are meh. You know, it just changes frequently. At least then, we're not playing the same thing all the time for months on end. I think that Bungie definitely needs to look into fixing that and finding a way to balance the game on a frequent basis so we're not stuck with people just using one or two weapons for months on end, and those being the most powerful things. Because it makes it stale, it makes it boring, and it makes it frustrating when you're just trying to run around and have fun with like Monte Carlo, for example. But that's not what this video is exclusively about. It's related, but it's not just about balancing and me being like, Bungie, come on and balance stuff. I wanted to talk to you guys about First Light, Bastion, and Skywatch. Now, as some of you may be wondering what these mystical maps are, I know. You can only find them in the Combined Arms playlist, which is a sucky-ass playlist, in my opinion, because you have to play a number of game types when maybe you just want to play Clash, or maybe you just want to play Control. You have to play a bunch of different game types in order to play these maps. So I wanted to ask you, beautiful, amazing people, would you like to see First Light, Bastion, and Skywatch in regular Crucible rotation? Either that's just being in a regular rotation, or maybe they're in there but they don't get picked as much as the other maps, but you still come across them here and there. Let me know in the comment section, would you like to see those 3 maps be put into regular Crucible rotation? And I'm gonna give you my opinion on the topic. So Bastion and First Light were taken out of regular rotation at the pretty very beginning is a sentence, I assure you. But very early on, they were taken out of regular rotation because people were complaining that they didn't like the map. And yes, it was kind of frustrating to go First Light 4 times in a row, or just go First Light, Bastion, First Light, Bastion, and then you never got to play any of the other maps. It was frustrating because they played a lot slower, especially as auto rifles were king back then, so the time to kill was a lot lower, and it was just, it got a little bit frustrating. I understand it, I get it. A lot of people were very happy when they were taken out, although I don't necessarily think Bungie should have listened, because who does that? Who takes out maps because people don't like them? Nobody does that. But now we have the DLC maps included into the regular rotation. We have a lot more maps available, and plus we didn't at that time have Asylum, we didn't have Anomaly. Those maps were just for salvage and skirmish. We didn't have those in regular rotation, so it was a very, very small pool of maps, and people were mad that they were constantly having to play these big ones, so I totally get it. But now we do have those smaller maps that were just made for skirmish and salvage initially. We have those maps, plus we have DLC maps, plus we have all the other maps. So the pool of maps for us to play is much larger than it was back then. Plus we have a meta of just blink shotgunning and hand cannons, And I think having the bigger maps might actually be a nice break from the current meta, because I assure you, there is a range where the last word in Thorn cannot outgun a scout rifle. I promise you it does exist. It may not seem like it exists, but it totally is a thing. So it might actually be nice to play on Bastion one time and be like, oh, let me use my scout rifle. Let me snipe. It might be nice to just have this break from the very, very small maps. I mean, think about the maps that we have. The only ones that I would really consider that are more well balanced in terms of their space would be Rusted Lands, Shores of Time, Pantheon. Is that it? That might be it. I'm probably missing some. I mean, Firebase Delphi is, you know, it's not too bad. It gets a little chaotic around B, and Blind Watch is, it's only chaotic around B, so maybe you could include those as well. But a lot of maps, even the one that I'm playing right now, Exodus Blue, for example, they're small, man. They're pretty small. They're not ones that are very good for scout rifles or very good for other kinds of weapons, and hand cannons are just reigning supreme, shotguns are just reigning supreme. So I think it might be really nice. I know for me, for example, I wouldn't mind playing First Light every now and then. I wouldn't mind playing Bastion, because then I could be like, oh, let me use the Scholar, let me use my multi-tool, although I use multi-tool all the time. But you guys know what I'm saying. It just might switch things up a little bit, make things a little bit fresher. So I personally would be all for bringing those 3 maps into regular rotation, because we have so many maps now. We have so many options for the random rotator person to choose for us to play, that we're not going to constantly come into contact with those big maps, and it might actually give us a nice welcome break from the constant blinking and the shotgunning and the thorns and the last words. So let me know in the comment section what you guys would actually think about having these 3 maps in regular rotation. Do you never want to see them again? Do you hate them? Or would you think that it would be kind of cool to have them back? Let me know in the comment section, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll speak to you awesome and amazing people later. Bye.